some of these are students in, and this is a program we're going to be growing. And Brian can tell us about really a lot of things, including we'll talk about the whole role of images versus words and so forth. But I want to start out with how you started out. You now have movies like this and many others that you've been involved in. How did you get to this point? Let's start with where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago.
Okay.
So I was a suburban boy, and my route to Hollywood is very, I mean, in some ways it's probably typical, but it's also not very flashy. I've just always been an artist, and I've drawn and done graphic design and all that all my life, and but I also happen to love movies. And so I watched tons and tons of movies when I was a kid, and television, and by the time I got into high school and going into college, I made my own little movie, my own student film, and but I did it on the side. I actually studied the visual arts as an illustrator. I was trained as an illustrator and in advertising and marketing design, but I made movies and wrote screenplays on the side. And one of the reasons why was because the life of a writer has a lot of solitude to it. You have to spend many hours alone writing. And when I was younger, I needed much more social interaction with people. So I kind of like put the writing aside and focused on, my involvement with my church and with people in my life, because I needed that, and it was too lonely. It was basically too lonely for me. And so I was living my normal life with a normal day job, but then I got married. And a year after I got married, I started writing and haven't stopped.
Let me back up for a minute. Trained how and where? Are you saying trained as an illustrator?
Trained as an illustrator and marketing and graphics. And so I studied screenwriting on the side. I'm self-taught, basically.
Okay.
Went to seminars, read all the books, and just basically wrote, because those are the three things that matter the most. And that's the great thing about movie making in general is, while degrees can certainly help, at least in Hollywood, what matters is what you've done. And so someone who can show me a great film, short film, tells me if they can make a good movie, not, oh, I went to New York, NYU or something, or USC Film School. It certainly can help, and you can make connections through that. But ultimately, it's what you create that proves what you can do.
Okay, so you're working in advertising in your early 20s.
Yeah, in my early 20s.
And you wanted to make films.
I wanted to make films. I've always loved movies, and so of course when I became older, I wanted to make movies.
Right.
But it takes a lot to do so. So when you pursue that as a hobby on the side, you start to realize, wow, this would be a complete change of life, and I wasn't ready at the time to do that. So, yeah, in my 20s, but then, like I said, once I got married in my 20s, then late 20s, then I just started I was able to write then.
Marriage.
I had the companionship, and
Okay.
and I think, I think that's what satisfied me.
Okay, you can actually go home in the evening rather than go chasing in the evening.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And so, what was the first thing you wrote when you're getting really into this, and you're married, you're more stable, and so forth? What was the first thing you wrote?
Well, I wrote a few scripts. One on, a lot of times what you do end up doing is you write something out of your life that, I've always wanted to write a movie about my life or something. So I wrote this family drama that was out of my own life, and it was terrible, of course, and no one's read it, and it's good that they didn't.
Do you still have a copy, or do you destroy?
No, I still have I save everything I wrote,
Okay.
so I definitely still have
But keep it locked up.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
right.
No one's going to read it.
Right.
I did a couple versions of it too. Did a play version. So it was good practice, and that's what they tell you is the first three scripts are usually just terrible anyway. So just keep writing, and that's the bottom line. Keep writing. That's how you get better. And there are very few people who, right out of the chute, can write a script that's really good. So, and especially like I said, if you're not taking class, if you're just studying on your own and you're learning on your own, it takes a little bit of extra effort.
Did you, at the time you were writing this, did you know the basic rule understanding about, the first three are really not going to go anywhere, or was it crushing when they did not? Or
no, I did, because what I did was I'm a researcher, so whenever I want to learn something or do something, I go and buy a bunch of books. That's not always, that's only one small part, because ultimately you need to do. do things, not just read, but I'm like that. So I went out and read a ton of books on screenwriting. And they all told me the rules, and I believed them. I just accepted them as this is the Bible for this world, and they all told me that. So I just said, okay, well, that's fine. Then I'll just keep doing it because I really wanted to do it. So. Yeah.
Okay, so when's your breakthrough? When do you actually get something?
Well, that's interesting because part of the process is when you start to write, you do your scripts. When you're out in the middle of, as we call it in Los Angeles and New York, flyover country,
right.
which
right.
is where I was in Chicago. You just have to get noticed. You have to make connections, and you're not in the Hollywood world to make connections. So you need to do things like cold calling production companies, trying to get an agent. You join all the contests that you can. You enter your scripts that you write, and that's what I did. So I did that for many years. In fact, it was about 10 or 11 years before I actually had a first movie made. So I've been entering contests for that many years, writing about a script a year, and just building up, trying to get some awards. And I won some awards with my scripts that then become part of my resume, and then that becomes part of my pitch to other producers when I have projects. Oh, well, I'm an award-winning screenwriter because I've won these screenwriting awards. Or would you take a look at this script because it won this award at this contest, et cetera. And some of the contests are meaningless. Nowadays, more and more of them are meaningless. But there are some big contests that if you have that on your resume, at least it makes you stand out enough to a producer to say, okay, this isn't just Joe on the street. They've done something that has accomplished something that makes it worthy of at least considering the screenplay. Because as we know, nowadays, everyone in the world is writing screenplays, and they've got hundreds of thousands of people making phone calls and letters into LA saying, I've got a great screenplay to read. Well, they don't have time to go through a lot of that. So they usually just deal with studios, with agents and producers that they already know, and then, or connections that they already know, or if you have something that makes you stand out. And that's what you're always trying to do, is find that angle. It's salesmanship.
So some of the contests are meaningless because the competition isn't very strong, or because everyone gets a blue ribbon for participation?
A little bit of all of that, and more of them now. That production companies have realized that one of the ways to search for a script for free is to have a contest. Because normally in Hollywood, you contact, as a writer, you either have agents or you go on your own, but you try to contact producers, producers make the movies, and get them to read your script to produce it to make the movie. And in terms of the business, they do that for free. But of course, it's you write them a letter, you have your agent call and they say, we've got this great script about such and such. And they'll say probably 99% of the time, nah, not interested. But if it sparks their interest, ooh, that sounds like an interesting idea, and this writer has something that makes them stand out in some way, then they'll say, okay, send it in, we'll take a look at it. If they like it, they'll go forward. If they don't, they'll just pass and say, oh, thanks for your script, not interested. But of course, to get them, they've got literally hundreds, piles of scripts to go through. So you're always trying to stand out in some way. So if they're already doing this, and the normal process is, you, as a professional, you do that for free. If I'm interested in your script, I'll produce it and I'll make money off of it. So the way that they get around that is you have a contest, some little production company that wants to make movies. Well, let's have a contest, such contest, send your scripts in, and what do you do when you have a contest? You charge a fee to enter the contest. So it's like you're paying them to read your script, $30 to read your script. And then the award of the contest is, the award winner of the contest will be produced by this production company that happens to be having the contest, you see? So it's just a lot of that is a scam, and I wouldn't want to be a part of it. But some of the more established festivals out there, are still worthy,
So really, it's a whole decade you're writing,
Yes.
and you're occasionally getting some recognition, winning this contest, that contest, and things like that. Is that where's the encouragement come from? How do you keep going for that length of time?
It's all within, because you don't get much encouragement at all. It's been said around Hollywood that you have to have rhino skin. And I'm sure that that's actually very similar to the world of journalism as well, which means you have to get rejected a lot. Most everything you do gets rejected. And so you just have to keep pounding and pounding. And it's all from within in your own personal vision that makes you keep going, that you still believe in what you want to do, because, for example, I would get a script and I would buy the Hollywood Creative Directory. This is another standard thing you do when you don't have an agent or you're outside of Hollywood, you don't have connections. You buy the Hollywood Creative Directory, which has hundreds of production companies in Hollywood, and you go down the list and you get all the companies that you think might be interested in your script based on material they've already done. You send out your query letter. So every script I would write, I would join 20 contests. I would contact a couple hundred production companies with my query letter, maybe get accepted to read the script at about 15, 20 of those, if you're that's a good one, maybe 10. And then, I basically kept all my rejection letters over the years. I've got hundreds of them. I think I heard Steve Martin make the joke that, he papered his wall, he wallpapered his wall with his rejection letters when he finally broke into the business, so to speak. So it's rhino skin. You've got to be tough. But there's another side of Hollywood that's sort of the opposite, where they also say you can die of kindness, because there's so much facade in Hollywood too that nobody wants to burn bridges, because you never know who's going to be. You never know what small person is going to rise to become big in the future. So what will happen as well is, if you get people to read your script and they don't like it or it's not good, they won't say why. They'll just say, hey, good writing, but not for us. And so there'll be, a lot of times people, it's not that they're cruel to you, sometimes they are, but mostly they're nice to you, and in an unhelpful way, because maybe it is terrible and you need to get better at it, but they won't tell you that because they don't want to, because hey, someday you might rise up, right? So a lot of like, hey, good writing, good job, not for us. So in a way, you never know if you're really good or not, because all of the best writers in Hollywood have been passed on their scripts. And if you look at a lot of the Oscar winners through history, Schindler's List, Steven Spielberg couldn't get Schindler's List made for 10 years. And that's how it is with most of these movies, where Forrest Gump was rejected by every studio in town. It's one of the best movies of all time. And it's also one of the biggest movie moneymakers of all time. And so you can see how there's this ironic juxtaposition in the world, in Hollywood, that terrible writers and great writers are equally rejected and passed on. So how do you know if you're a terrible writer or a genius who hasn't been discovered? Yeah. You just never know. So you just keep going out of your love for it, and because you really want to do something. And again, many successful writers and directors and everything will tell you, the only reason why I'm here still is because I was the only one left standing after 10, 15 years. Everyone else sort of, that was working with me at the same time gave up, and I just didn't give up. So it's sheer raw perseverance. And of course, as a Christian, I also believe that God is involved in my life, and so for whatever reasons, He's blessed me with different avenues, and I'm grateful for that.